Hello, everyone. I've been live twice today. You'll be sick of the sight of me, but thankfully I'm bringing interesting people to you, so it's not all on me. Good evening. It is the 3rd of December. My God. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Heidi Mavir. I'm the founder of EOTAS Matters. We work supporting parents and carers of children and young people who are neurodivergent, who are navigating the education system. I'm also the author of Your Child is Not Broken. So I've been bringing people to you over the past 6 months or so who are kind of like change makers, wave makers, awesome humans in the fields of SEND, mental health, advocacy, disability rights. And I'm bringing people to you and putting them in front of you so you can get to know some of the people that I've got to know who are just doing awesome things. So tonight, the lovely Sarah Lamerton is with me. I nearly called you Laverton. I don't know why. Sarah Lamerton is with me, and
That's all right.
we're talking a little bit about Sarah's work. So I'm going to let Sarah do a quick introduction for herself. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to be looking away because I'm going to be sharing it into groups, etc. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Sarah, your background, what's brought you here, why are you here? Why are you here?
Okay, why? Why? So I'm a teacher and have been for the last 20 plus years now. So I've taught that most of that time in inner city schools with lots of children with a variety of different needs, and so I have 2 children of my own, a son who has autism and my daughter who is severely sight impaired. So I always felt like the only way you could learn and the only way you could do school, was to be in school. So it came as a bit of a shock, really, when my 2 children were struggling being in school. So we reached, my son struggled pretty much all the way through. Nobody picked up on his autism. So by the time he got to year 5, he was saying he wanted to die, and that he didn't want to be here anymore. So that was obviously a shock. So we he had some play therapy, and the therapist who was working with him said, get him out of that environment now. So we decided, as you do, you and ah what to do. We decided to home educate for the remainder of his primary years, and also at the same time we were looking at, so my daughter, who is severely sight impaired, she struggled with accessing the primary setting because every day is the same in a primary school. You teach things, you teach maths and English at the start of the day. So if she was too tired because she was exhausted all the time just trying to see the same things that we try and see each day, so she would wake up most days feeling sick and having headaches. So when we decided to home educate Jack, we thought actually it would probably be a good idea to home educate our daughter Harry as well, because that way she can have, we can start the school day in line with exactly what she needs. So we took them both out and we decided to home educate. So I home educated Harry for 4 years, right the way through the rest. So basically key stage 2, and she got on much better. So I stuck to the curriculum purely just because she wanted to go back into school. They both wanted to be in school, but they just couldn't access it properly. The things that needed to be in place, people were just sort of kicking back against, and I was getting a lot of resistance. And I think really so when I had to leave my teaching post because I couldn't teach an entire school year in school and also home educate 2 children at the same time. So I left my post and set up my own my first business as a tutor, which I'm currently still running, but and we home educated and I taught groups at the same time so that they could access learning with others as well. My son went back into secondary school, and everything went to pot completely. We discovered that I went down the route for a diagnosis, which he got, but it just went completely tits up, really, to be honest. So he was then saying, again, we came back to I don't want to live anymore. And he had a storm assessment, and they judged him to be at risk of suicide. And it was really tough time. The more I emailed school, so I felt like one of those parents, like the parent that just is always always emailing, always, always ringing up and saying, come on, help, But actually, in hindsight, I think that has been the thing that has led to him now. So he's now year 11 and he's managing in school. We reached the point several times where we were like, actually, I think you'd be better off out of school. Let's consider this home educating again. But in the end, he decided he wanted to stay. So his decision. And, we just made the best of it. So we went through stages where, I asked them to drop subjects. So when he was in year 8, he dropped geography early because he couldn't see the point being autistic. He couldn't see the point. He said, well, why am I doing this if I'm not going to continue it? So, there was a lot of to and fro. But I think the fact that I know the system and how it works so well, because of being a teacher and being, I've been on both sides of the fence. So I think that placed me really well to be able to advocate for him, and know exactly what he needs. I could unpick everything that he said to me because I know the sorts of things that happen inside school. I know how the lessons work, and all of that, I think, enabled me to be a good advocate for him in terms of, I could go back to the school and say, this is what he needs. I knew when they were fobbing me off. So I could I could say, look, I know that's a load of rubbish. Let's put things in place that he actually needs. But each time I went back and said, for example, he needs a reduced timetable because he's in burnout. He needs a reduced time, all those sorts of things. And I think when you know all of that, it is about knowing your rights, isn't it, with it? And
100%.
and the terminology and being able to communicate all that really succinctly. So I could bullet point and say to them, this is what he needs. Let's add it to his passport so he can have that in place.
And you were able to do that for him without needing to pursue an EHCP, right? You were able to kind of because you knew how to get him what he needed through asking for reasonable adjustments and through understanding the system and knowing how, good quality teaching works and how the school day works and what accommodations should and can be made. So
that's right. We've reached a point now where I just say to him, I just say to the school, he needs a late start today. And I don't even wait. We just do it. And they authorize it because they know that, I think that we've built up that communication, that level of communication and trust that they know full well that he will be there if he can be there. And if he can't, then do you see what I mean? There's that we've built 100%. That relationship.
Do you think that being a teacher helped you with that? Do you think it gave you an element of credibility there in terms of when you were advocating?
Definitely. I think so. Yeah.
And obviously you have seen and do see through the work that you do through your tutoring and the other work that we're going to talk about in a minute, when that doesn't work for parents and you understand, I think both of us have because I'm always conscious of this when I talk about what we've achieved, and I don't want it to be not acknowledge that there's been a lot of privilege in that. And there's been a lot of, we've been quite lucky with some of the people we've dealt with. I've had a really good support. It's not always, well, it isn't as straightforward as just knowing what to say and who to say it to. But it's a flipping good start, right? It's a really good start. So,
we've shed so many tears, or I have, in terms and been so frustrated at times. So even though I've known the system, I'm not saying it's been easy. It's been horrendously stressful, and I completely, so I'm not, it has been rubbish at times. And there's been plenty of swearing at times and plenty of moments, but I think it's certainly knowing,
that tenacity and understanding the system. So what you have done, as part of being fueled by that and to help other people, is that you've written a book, right?
I have, yes.
Well, talk to me about the book.
So it's called, well, this came firstly, it came from my intense, being very passionate about how much I disliked the system and how much it was failing. It failed both of my children for different reasons. My daughter fit with a physical thing, and my son with his autism, it completely failed him. So I was so incensed by this that I just had to get all of this out. I just felt so angry all the time about it. So I thought I'll just write it down. So I started writing things down to get it out of my system, really. And my husband said to me, why don't you just write a book? So I thought, actually, yes, why don't I? So it's called How the School System Fails Children with Needs and What You Can Do About It. I've split it sort of into 3 sections. So the first section, I've talked about the good bits about school, because there are people who like school out there. And I think it's important to acknowledge that some people do have a good experience of it. And then I've written about the bad bits of school and how, it isn't always a bed of roses. And then the main bulk of the book, I've explored lots of different areas, really, that the school system fails children with additional needs. And I think I have conversations with parents of the children that I teach, and, frequently. And I think, actually, you're okay if you don't have any needs. Mostly you can manage well in school and you can get on fine. And most schools, if you're choosing, for example, a secondary school, you could probably choose most places and they would be fine because your child doesn't have any additional needs and they fit that nice, neat little box. But if you don't, that's where you've got to be a bit more picky. We had to be really picky for my daughter, choosing her a secondary school. One school we looked around offered me a job as her TA and said, we can't give her a TA unless you'd like the job because we can't get any. Another one said to us, I know, it's balmy, isn't it? I just sat there like, seriously?
How embarrassing.
Now, actually.
Oh, God.
Somebody else, another secondary school said to us, do we need to mark all of those lines on the stairs? We were like, well, yes, only if you don't want her to fall down them, with a vision impairment. So they weren't,
do you think they should just do alternate steps or something? Like, what the hell?
Well, there's a lot of stairs to colour yellow, they were saying. The school.
I don't know why I'm surprised. I'm not surprised.
No, I know.
Surprises me, but
the school she's at now, we're a yes school, and they said when I said we might find she needs a reduced timetable. No problem, we can do that. We might find that she needs this. That's no problem either. We can do that. So it was an entirely different experience. And, I think you need that, don't you? When you've got to be really picky when you've got a child with additional needs, which is a shame.
You do. And I think this is the conversation I have with parents a lot, regardless of whether you've got any HCP or not. If you know that your child has support needs and needs something over and above what other children will need, in whatever way that looks, it's really important, especially when you're making transitions to new schools, that you scaffold the hell out of that, and that you have as many conversations as you need to. I mean, like, my son's recently gone to university and, oh my God, like, so many emails, so many conversations. I think we went 4 or 5 times to visit. We looked at lots of places, but this place in particular, we went a lot. And I kind of, you can't I don't think you can over prepare. Like, I just don't. And like, you don't want to give yourself a hard time and put extra pressure on yourself, but equally, you don't want to get caught out by anything.
No.
So,
and the more you say, the more they know, and the better they can get to know your child. And I think then you have a much better starting point, don't you? The more information, the better, I think. So,
I agree. I 100% agree. So your book is coming out in January, February time. Yes. And then you've also got a freebie. So talk to us about the freebie that you've made, because I love this.
So the idea was really to give parents a heads up on 5 easy changes that the school can make so that you can get the right support in place for your child. So, for example, I don't know, it might be reduced timetable. It could be that if your child's in primary school, I know when I used to give children that I was teaching like a now and next. So children really don't like change and struggle with that. They had a what they're doing now card and a what was going to happen next, so that they knew in advance what was going to happen. It sounds like a little thing, doesn't it? But it can make such a huge difference because it reduces the level of anxiety.
Yeah, definitely.
Things like sensory breaks. So Again, when my daughter started secondary school, she needs to stop and rest her eyes halfway through every lesson. So, we made sure that was in place. It's crucial that she has that break, otherwise she's going to get headaches and things. So yeah, it's just, it could be a sensory break outside the room. I mean, or it could be that maybe somebody needs to fiddle with something. So it could be having a fidget toy or something, all of those things to reduce anxiety and create the space for you to learn, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
If
and
you've
the
got
key is that they are easy things that are not going to cost the school anything, and they're not going to be tricky to put in place.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
I know that sometimes when we're advocating, we're quite good at the top level stuff, like, oh, we think they need a TA, we think they need, whatever it might be, that are kind of quite resource heavy adjustments. But actually what we're saying is there are some dead simple things that if you ask any Senko with half an inch of common sense, they'll go, yeah, of course we can do that. And these are those things, and they make a difference. Like you say, they make a massive difference.
Massively. Seems like, so I had a girl who I was tutoring yesterday evening, and she came, so she had a meeting with her head of year to see how things were going, as she's just started. She's in year 7, and the head of year said to her, your focus is pretty poor, isn't it? And she said to me, but I have ADD. And I was like, yes. I said, she shouldn't even have mentioned that, because how are you possibly how is your focus going to be good when that's, when you have a ADHD, or, it's just not, is it? Also,
when you've thrown that in the mix in the middle of a lesson, you can be damn sure that child isn't thinking about anything else apart from what you've just said to them for the rest of the session.
No. And she said, another thing, she said, the teacher said to her, said, if they ask the same question twice, then they'll get a behaviour point for that. Mm-hmm. And I said, but so, the conversation I had with her mum afterwards was, you need to email into the school and say, these are the things she's currently having issues with, and make sure that that's on her passport, so that she does need, with processing issues, sometimes they need to be able to ask things for a second time, because they don't take it all in the first time round.
Or a 5th or a 6th or a 7th or an 8th time.
Exactly. Yeah. And it
not all of us have great working memory.
Yeah, no. And that is a need, and it's simple to fix. Just let them ask it again. It doesn't cost any money, Yeah. So
I remember when I was at school, my mum went to a parents' evening once and was told by a teacher that I asked too many questions.
Right.
And my mum was furious about it. And apparently my dad told me, because they went together, that she said there's no such thing as a child that asks too many questions. There's just teachers who don't know how to give the right answers.
Brilliant. I love that.
My mum was a bit of a ball breaker, but like I am, and my son is the same. I wasn't identified as being neurodivergent until I was in my 40s, but I'm ADHD, so of course I ask lots of questions. But my son is the same and was the same, and we're both, that's how we process. We ask questions to clarify, we repeat things, we think out loud. It's a processing aid. It's how our brains work. And I remember he was in school. When he was in school, he had an RS teacher who was amazing, but her fix for it, or her workaround, was because he did ask a lot of questions, and they wouldn't all be I remember they wouldn't all necessarily be pertinent for the whole class, but they were his way of processing. And so they once watched a video, and she said to him, Theo, I know you're going to have lots of questions, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a piece of paper and a pen, and you just write down all your questions, and then at the end we'll go through them together. Cool. So I think the video was something like 11 minutes, and he wrote down 35 questions.
That's amazing. I think that's brilliant.
And the video was about...
You go through them with him.
The video was about nuns.
Right.
One of the questions was, how do the nuns know whose shoes are whose? Because he'd noticed they all had the same shoes. So but that's the level of detail that he needs. Right. And she said, write down all of your questions, and he did. Now she was great, because she just dismissed the class and then sat with him and went through all of his questions.
And that's perfect, isn't it? That's good. It doesn't have to be with everybody, does it? It just needs that bit of understanding.
And I think for him, having a teacher when he was really struggling in school, she was the last lesson that he could go to, so he couldn't manage anything else, but he could still manage that lesson. And that was because she made that time for him, and she really did meet him where he was.
Yeah.
You know, I think it makes an absolute massive difference. Massive. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Time
I'm
and
really
space,
pleased you've done
isn't it?
that.
Yeah.
Say that again, sorry.
Time and space, isn't it? Time to give you, but space to also, yeah.
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 Otherwise, he would have got to 25 and still wondered how
Yeah.
nuns could tell whether they're which shoes are theirs. It would have worried him. It would have kept him awake at night.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Yeah.
And also, she was able to have a conversation about, like, well, I don't know. What do you think? How do you think you would be able to decide which shoes were whose if they were all the
Yeah.
same? You know what I mean? There's just so much.
Yeah.
There's so much beauty in the curiosity of kids.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah.
I agree. So, sendhelper.co.uk. Sendhelper.co.uk is your website. People can come and get your freebie from there now, which is your
Yeah.
5 easy changes your child's school can make. And you're also, as well as your book coming out in the new year, you're writing a weekly newsletter for parents as well, aren't you? So people can get that in their inbox.
Or fortnightly at the minute. But yeah.
Fortnightly,
Yeah.
forgive me.
That's
I'm
all right.
so pleased. It's so good. What are you most looking forward to? I mean, I'm guessing you're excited for the book coming out, but what are you looking forward to coming forward?
I love helping people, and I know you probably get loads of people saying that, but I genuinely do. And I really hate the fact that there's so many children who are struggling with needs in the system, and I just think there's no need for it. And I just want to be able to help as many people as I can, really, to access the system and make it work for them. You know, I think
Yeah.
I hate the fact that I have all this knowledge and I really want to be able to share it and to, you know, and to help people. So I'm quite excited to see what comes from this, you know, as we're moving forwards. And yeah,
I'm excited. I'm excited to get my hands on your book. I can't wait.
I'll
Because
send
I
you a
think
copy.
it's going to be one of those. Oh, I'd love that. I'll buy a copy. You know, I'm not completely from Yorkshire, but I'm keen to. I always think that anything that parents with educator experience can give to other parents and carers, it's priceless. Because, like you say, you've got that experience of working in the system. You've also got experience of home educating. You've got experience of two children with quite different needs, because you've got a child with a visual impairment and you've got a child with neurodivergence. So, you know, I think it's just a lovely. I can tell the book's going to be really helpful to people, and I'm really pleased you've written it. And we'll probably get you back to have a chat when the book actually comes out, and we'll make sure that people know it's coming. So thank you for joining me, Sarah. If you're watching on replay, people, drop me a comment. Let me know that you've watched this on replay. Go and find Sarah at sendhelper.co.uk. Get her freebie. Get yourself on her mailing list. And yeah, thank you so much for being with me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.